Hello, everyone. Sorry about today's delay. Here we are. Hi, morning, everyone. I'm glad to see you all here again today. Good morning. We will wait just a few seconds, everyone. We have a lot of people still in the waiting room. So we're gonna start with this session today. Let me quickly share my screen. So again, good morning, everyone. As you know, my name is Luciano Gasparini. I welcome you to the SMExport Week. This is a new cycle of free training sessions on international trade that it's led by Connect Americas. This training program was created by Connect Americas, but by our platform, which is the business platform of the Inter-American Development Bank. And it's led and co-organized together with the Center of Entrepreneurship of the International Chamber of Commerce, and also with the support of Google, Camaco, Jampro, and Export TT. As you know, this cycle will take place throughout this week, and in each session, we will delve into a different topic on what SMEs need to know to access international markets. In this training program in particular, you will not only acquire valuable technical skills, but we will also have some practical sessions like today's session, so you can start to see the potential of export. For those who are yet not familiar with Connect Americas, Connect Americas is the largest business platform in Latin America and the Caribbean. It was created over 10 years ago in 2014 by the Inter-American Development Bank, the IDB, in collaboration with Google, MasterCard, Sealand, Meta, and DHL. Our goal at Connect Americas is to help small and medium-sized enterprises do more and better businesses and investments in their countries and also abroad. We train entrepreneurs, accompany them in their internationalization process, connect them with clients and suppliers abroad, and provide them with financing options. Nowadays, we already have more than 750,000 users on the platform. So if you are not part of Connect Americas yet, we invite you to join us at connectamericas.com. It is completely free. So for those who have questions about Connect Americas or about the SMExport Week, you can contact me via LinkedIn through the QR code that you see there on the screen. So you can scan that QR code, get to my LinkedIn profile, and you can write a message there in case you have any comment, questions, or doubts about Connect Americas. And just one thing before we start the session, we'll have a presentation led by our speaker. I will also provide a brief introduction on a new platform that we have. And then at the very end, we will have some time for Q&A, for questions. So please, if throughout the session, feel free to drop your questions or your comments or your doubts either on the chat or on the Q&A button that you can find at the bottom of the Zoom window. So at the end, we'll have some time to answer some of those questions. Also, remember that those who participate in 80% of the SMExport Week sessions can request their participation certificate. So for those who cannot attend a live session, who join late, or who needs to leave early a session, know that all the sessions are being recorded. So every day in the evenings, we are sending all the recordings by email, so you can watch the recording and still apply to the certificates in case you miss a live session. And even if you think that this program or this certificate might be useful to a colleague, to an employee, or to any other professional, they still have time to join our upcoming sessions, or even to watch the recordings of the previous ones and still apply to the certificate. So they just need to go to connectamericas.com/SMExport and register. Today, we will have a session on Incoterms Rules. We will have an expert who is part of the ICC. As you know, the International Chamber of Commerce, or ICC, is the organization that created the Incoterms rule and that update the Incoterms rules every 10 years. But before we start with our session today and our speaker, I would like to show you something that is related to the topic that we are seeing today, that is this new tool that we have. And then when we go into the theoretical or the theory of the Incoterms rule led by Bashe, today's speaker, you will understand better how to leverage the power of this tool. So this is a free tool that is hosted in Connect America, so you all have access to it. You can enter or navigate this platform just entering into Incoterms.connectamericas.com. Again, it's open and free for everyone. And the idea of this tool is for you to have a fixed structure of the Incoterms rule to facilitate your calculation, the calculation of your export prices. So if you don't have experience exporting and you need to build up your price list, and you have a lot of different items, a lot of different products, and you don't know how to use or how to structure the Incoterms, this is the perfect tool for you, because as we are going to navigate now and to see now, we will have the whole structure of how the Incoterms are actually structured, and this will facilitate your calculation. So again, it's for free. So if you go on your browser, you go to Incoterms.connectamericas.com, you will be able to see this platform. And what will you find here? You have some basic information that it's not mandatory, but I suggest that you complete this information, because then you will be able to save all your calculations. And when you do that, it will be easier for you to get access to your historical calculation if you fill this information. Because if you are from Buenos Aires and you want to export to a potential client which is located in Spain, you may have your price, the price of your product, to export specifically to Spain, considering the logistic cost to Spain. But then if you have another client that want to buy that same product, but let's say from Shanghai, probably that export price will be different, because the logistic cost will be different. So if you complete this information here, it will be easier for you then to get access to your historical calculation and have a specific idea of what that calculation was made for. So here you have the exchange rate, because as we know, some calculations, we have it in our local currency, pesos, soles, reais, or any local currency, specifically those that are based on our country of origin. And then we have some costs that might be in dollars or in other foreign currency. So if we put here and declare the exchange rate, then we will be able to complete all the information on both currencies. And we will see that, for instance, the work for cost, I have it in local currency. Let's say that is 10,000 pesos. Then as you can see, the price in dollars, it's calculated automatically. And again, if the production cost, I have it in dollars, let's say that it's like $50, the price in my local currency will also be calculated automatically, because I declare here the exchange rate. So this particular field of all the ones that are here at the very top, this is the most important, because it will help me do a better and more efficient calculation down here. Again, If you have any question or any comment while I'm presenting this, just feel free to drop it in the chat, and we will go through it afterwards. So now let's go dive deeper into the platform. We have 4 main groups that we will see afterwards with our speaker of Incoterms Rules. So we have the E group, the F group, the C group, and the D group, all of them with different Incoterms. So this is sequential. So in case I want to sell in terms DDP, which is deliver duty pay, which is I put my product in the specific place designated by the buyer in their country, and I have to proceed through the custom in both countries, the country of origin and the country of destination, and pay all the tax. I'm paying everything. The buyer doesn't need to do anything. If I need to do that, I don't have to go directly to this module here, to the last one, and just complete this information. I need to go through one and each of these 4 modules, because Incoterms works in a sequential way. So in order to get to the very last Incoterm rule, I need to fill in all the fields that I have before that Incoterm. So I always need to start with the X word. The X word is, here we have, if you click in here, you will have more information. Again, then we will have the theory behind all of this with our speakers. So we will have all that information, and we will go through all the Incoterms deeper. But here we have some basic information. For instance, the seller, if we are selling, we are the seller. The seller is limited to placing the merchandise at the disposal of the buyer at the seller's establishment within the established term, without being responsible for the release, for export, or for the loading of the merchandise in any collection vehicle. That is, I just put my goods, my products in my facilities, and just ask the buyer to come to my facilities to grab, to pick up my product, and they have to take that product to their facilities in the other country. So this is the one that presents the few responsibilities for the seller. So we start and we have to complete all this information. In this particular tool, none of these fields are mandatory. So in case I don't have, for instance, an exchange insurance cost, I don't need to fill this information in. I can just leave it blank or just leave it with a 0. So I will just fill in all the information that I have. And I will just put some example numbers here just for you to see how this works. I will see that I am putting here some numbers, and all the information is being calculated automatically here, right? So I don't need to do the calc here. We have the gross cost of the products in export terms. Then if we have some drawbacks, and then I can add the profit or contribution margin. Let's say I want to add a 50% margin. So now this is my export value, the export value of my products. Again, this is all manual input. It's not the system that will provide the work for cost, because everyone that is being part of this session today, probably you all have different work for cost. So this is all manual input that you just need to type into the platform, and this will provide the necessary information for the platform to calculate this value here. So once I have the X work, I can go to the next module, the F group. In the F group, we have 3 rules: free alongside ship, free carrier, and free onboard. Here we have some additional information that then we will go through it, but this is the same logic. We have to type all the products, all the costs here that I have at the system. Again, you will see that this change the price calculated in here. And we can go through all of them. It's the same logic. What we need to do is just to save it. In case we want to save it, we can just put a name in here, a country of origin, let's say Colombia, and I want to send it to Spain. And I can type here my specific product. And when I save it, then I can just export this information to a PDF. So in my PDF, I will have all the information that I just typed in. As you can see here, this is the export price that I typed. This is the fast FOB FCA price that I typed in. And here you have the details. So in case you want to share this information with someone else, with a colleague, with a potential client, you can just print this information, print this PDF, and you will be able to share it with more people. So I invite you, as I told you, this platform has been developed all together with the ICC. Now Vashe is here on the session, so she will be able to provide you with all the theory behind the Incoterms that will help you navigate better this platform. But my suggestion, my recommendation is, please just go into incoterms.connectamericas.com and just navigate it because it's for free. So when you navigate it, you will find it easier every time to calculate your Incoterms prices. So now that Basia is here, I would like to welcome her. She will explain everything about the Incoterms rule, the theory behind this, that is kind of a practical tool. And she's, I would say, the perfect person for us to explain this issue. She's Vache Garcia de Novales. She's a business lawyer with more than 30 years of experience, and she focused her practice on international business law, particularly drafting and negotiating international commercial contracts and mediating disputes arising therefrom. She is also vice chair of the ICC Commission on International Commercial Law and Practice. And she's also the chairperson of the ICC Spain Commission on Commercial Law and Practice, and member of the ICC Spain expert group of the Incoterms 2020 rules. So as you can see, she has a lot of experience with Incoterms. She's working closely at the ICC at different levels, even with the ICC Spain Commission on Commercial Law and Practice. So she has a lot of knowledge to share with all of us. So I won't take any more of your time, Bashe. Thank you for being here with us today. The floor is yours. I think I just grant you access to unmute yourself and put the camera if you want.
Thank you very much, Luciano, and good afternoon to everyone. Oh yes, now I couldn't turn my camera on. Now I can see it is working. So it is an absolute pleasure to be with you this morning for you, this afternoon for me in Europe. And I think we are going to make the most of our time. And I would be more than glad if some of the tips I want to give you today serve you and are useful in your day-to-day work. Because at the end, it is your task to focus on your business. You have products that you want to export or to deliver to another countries. And of course, your business is to focus on how to make your company, your business is successful and profitable. So I know that all these legal matters, you see them as a barrier, which do not let you focus on your real business. But at the end, think of this as just a way of avoiding, I cannot say avoiding, a way of minimizing the risk which is inherent to any international, to any cross-border transaction. So today, I'm going to introduce Incoterms 2020 rules from a practical point of view. So I know that most of you in the audience use the rules in your daily work, but it is also my understanding and my experience that very few of you have really read the official publications on Incoterms 2020. And that is why there are a lot of misunderstanding concerning the rules. Because at the end, any business, typically in their daily work, are going to use 2 or 3 of the Incoterms rules. But my advice to you is that if you are practitioners, if you are in foreign trade business, please go to the official source, go to the ICC publication on Incoterms and read at least those 2 or 3 rules that you are using. And the first piece of advice I have for you is that there are rules which are adequate for sellers, and there are rules which are more adequate for buyers, and they are not coincident. So you may choose 1 or 2 particular rules which are suitable for your business when you are selling, and there are other rules which are more suitable when you are buying. But let me share my screen. So I'm going to share with you a brief presentation which will lead us through all these details I want to share with you. I think, Luciano, I can share my screen, I guess.
You should be able to.
Okay.
It's loading. Yeah, we can see it now.
You can see it now. Okay.
Yeah.
So I know that the title of this session is about formulating our export price and how can the rules help us in this task. And we are going to get to that, but please allow me tell a few things to have like a basis of what are the rules, because I know by experience that everybody uses the rules, but very few of you really know how they work. So let me just explain. First thing, which is important, Incoterms rules are not a law coming from a parliament or a decree. It is not what we call a law coming from a parliament of a government. I mean, they are not mandatory. They are not mandatory, but they are the international standard, officially recognized as the international standard when it comes to how should we understand delivery of goods, and this is also important, only goods, not services. When we sell them, we, a seller, sell and deliver these goods to a buyer. And the buyer can be in our domestic or local market, or it can be overseas, it can be in another country. So it is true that the rules have been developed as an international standard for foreign trade, but if they are just a tool, they have proved to be useful. Is there any problem to use it for using them in our daily work, in our sales, in our own country? Not at all. We can use them without any problem. So they are developed by ICC. What is ICC? ICC is the International Chamber of Commerce, which I also would like to point out that the International Chamber of Commerce is not like a federation, international federation of our chambers of commerce as we know them in our countries. It is nothing like that. It is an organization which was created, and the date I think is important, in 1919, which is just after the First World War, meaning we had our war was a room, and there were a bunch of business people thinking that the world would be a better place if we had an organization taking care of collecting and developing all these international standards that companies have been using for years and for hundreds of years, and which have proved to be useful to make negotiations easier between sellers and buyers. And this was a starting point of ICC. And let me also point out that ICC does not invent Incoterms rules. Incoterms rules are a development coming from practice, from what sellers and buyers do in their daily trade. So these are tools which help sellers and buyers negotiate only one provision in their contract of sale, only one, which is the provision concerning delivery of the goods, with everything that delivery of the goods imply, and which we are going to speak about later. But this is important. Is it compulsory? Is it mandatory to use Incoterms rules? Not at all. But if the seller and the buyer decide that they agree that they are going to use the Incoterms rules, then everything that the rules set for, it is mandatory for the parties. Why is it? As any other provision under a contract of sale. And you can use Incoterms rules for your international sales or your imports, but you can also use them at a domestic and local level. So the first time, well, this is the official. I don't know if you can see it. Yeah, this is the official publication on Incoterms rules. So the first version, which was published by ICC, was in 1936. And from that moment, there have been a bunch of different releases. And it is also important to know that taking into account that the rules are not mandatory, they are not a law, as we understand the law, all versions of the Incoterms rules since 1936 are in force, so they can be used. That is why we strongly recommend that when you are using the rules, please say which version you are referring to. It is also true that if nothing is said about which version are we using, it is understood that we are always referring to the latest release by ICC. So that said, okay, this is a presentation. I think that most of you have seen this chart. Here, you have a presentation of the current 11 rules in a way that I think it's not very practical, especially for people who are not familiar with the rules, because here you have the rules officially presented depending on the means of transport. So at a glance, we can just see that there are rules that should only be used if the main transport is a vessel. So we have rules which should only be used for ocean cargo, ocean or river cargo. And there are another rules which can be used irrespective of the means of transportation we are using, and can be used even if the main means of transport is also a vessel. This is something that it is very, very clear if we see it now, but it's not so clear because if we make a survey and we ask you, yeah, which are the rules you are familiar with? Most of you would say Ex Works, FOB, CIF. FOB, CIF, as you can see, are only rules which are suitable if the main means of transport is a vessel, but shouldn't be used if we are talking about air cargo or we are talking about road cargo. So just to give you an example, the customs authority in Barcelona, in Spain, have been questioning and imposing fines to companies because they have been using the rules incorrectly. From a legal point of view, I find this practice from our customs in Barcelona, in Spain, really incredible because if we agree that the rules are not mandatory rules, only standards, why should the custom authority in Barcelona impose fines on companies for using them incorrectly? We could say, okay, I can use them the way I want, to a certain extent. What I mean is that, of course, if the rules are a tool, the parties can customize the rules. And this is true, and this is accepted with a limitation. The parties can customize the rules, make them tailor-made, so to speak, to their needs, only in terms of costs. Who pays what, and if this this specific cost is included or not in this rule, but the parties cannot customize the rules in terms of what is the delivery place in this rule. Because if we change the delivery place, then we will be on the grounds of a different rule. Okay, so we will come back to this, but here, what you can see in this slide is just a summary of the contents in the official publication of Incoterms 2020. So it is very clear, and my recommendation, if you are practitioners, if you are using the rules every day, please read just the introduction, because I must say that an enormous effort has been made by ICC in this last release by trying to make a language which is clear for business, not for lawyers. We are used to read any kind of very dark and very difficult text, but the language has been written for business people. So look at this. The introduction is explaining what Incoterms do, and this is important, and what they do not do. Why is it so important? Because the Incoterms rules do not provide a complete contract of sale. They provide only what are customary and standard rules concerning the main obligation under a sale contract, which is delivery of the goods. When are the goods delivered? Where is the exact point of delivery? Because the moment delivery is made by the seller, what happens? The risk of any loss of or damage to the goods passes on the buyer. So it is really important to know where does delivery take place. Okay, we will come back to this. The introduction also guides us in the process of how best to incorporate the rules into a sales contract. And I am stressing this point because we can find the rules, we can find the rules connected to contracts of transport for the carriage of the goods, connected to insurance, shipping insurance contracts. We can find the rules connected with customs clearance obligation, also with the letter of credits of any kind of documentary credits, but the rules are negotiated and agreed between a seller and a buyer, meaning under a sales contract. And then they will have an impact on other contracts where either the seller or the buyer are not a party. And this is really important, and we are going to talk about this. So what is let's say, the core of the rules? The core of the rules is how is delivery, the passing of risks, and the allocation of costs made under a contract of sale, international or domestic, according to this international practice. So the introduction also deals with the rules and the carrier. This relationship with other contracts I've been talking about, how best to understand the sea and inland waterway rules, and those rules which are suitable for any kind of transport. The other, that is something new in the Incoterms 2020, and of course the differences with the previous version, which are very few material differences. And there's also a warning on this customization of the rules I've been talking about, saying that what I already told you, that the parties may customize the rules in terms of costs, allocation of costs, but never by changing the place of delivery. I'll give you an example. If I say I'm a Spanish seller selling to a company in Colombia, selling my goods to a company in Colombia, I could say, okay, This is a contract made under CIF, Port of Barranquilla terms. What is the place of delivery? The place of delivery is once the goods have been loaded on board the vessel at the port of departure, always at the port of departure. So at any port in Spain, typically. Can the parties agree that, okay, this is CIF, Port of Barranquilla in Colombia, place of delivery, Colombia? Not at all. Not at all, because sea rules imply delivery at departure before the main transport has begun. Okay, just to illustrate this. So, what do Incoterms rule do? And this is the core of the rules. First thing, the rules apply to B2B sales contract. Discussion was made during the preparation of the Incoterms 2020 version. If, okay, with the increase of marketplaces and B2C contracts, should Incoterms apply also to all these B2C contracts of sale? And the answer was no. ICC has always been involved in B2B transactions, so it is an important player in B2B transactions. So far, they don't apply to B2C sales. And contracts for the sale of goods, they don't apply to the sale to the provision of services. Why? Because the core of the Incoterms rules, as I already said, is delivery, physical delivery of goods. So they apply to B2B sales contracts. They tell us what are the duties of the seller and the buyer, not concerning an overall sale contract, but concerning delivery of the goods. Who does what? Who has, sorry, we have to think that even if we can apply the rules for our domestic, sales, they come from an international environment. So, okay, in order for the seller to deliver the goods to the buyer, they are not going to meet. They are not going to meet in the middle of the ocean on board the vessel. Here are the goods, here's the money. That never happens. So they explain what we should understand by delivery. And delivery is not going to be physical delivery to a buyer. Typically, it will be delivering to a carrier, meaning placing the goods at the disposal of the buyer. So if we want that the goods to arrive to a final destination, so someone will have to hire and arrange for transportation, taking out shipping insurance, maybe getting licenses for export clearance or for import clearance. So there will be costs involved, of course, arising of these tasks and services. There will be duties and taxes for import clearance. There will be costs such as checking, inspections, yeah, all kind of handling activities and tasks such as loading, unloading, are doing any kind of handling services to the goods. So who does what? Who is responsible for making export clearance, making import clearance, hiring the transport, taking out insurance, getting licenses, paying taxes and duties, and where does the risk pass on the buyer? Which risk? The risk of loss of or damage to the goods during transport. This is what the Incoterms rules are about, and nothing else. And I want to stress this out, nothing else. Especially the rules don't say a word about the transfer of ownership. This is a very common mistake, very worldwide spread, because there are many people who say, okay, according to the Incoterms rule, we have agreed under our sale contract, ownership of the goods passes on the buyer. Not at all. not at all. This is a question that has to be dealt with under the sale contract, but it is not solved, it is not regulated by the Incoterms rules. That is why I was saying at the beginning, the Incoterms rules deal with the main obligation of the seller, which is delivery of the goods. They don't deal with, of course, with contract of services. When does a transfer of ownership take place? What if I have received goods that are not compliant with the specifications we have agreed? Do I have to pay the price to my supplier? These are questions you will deal with under a contract of sale, but the rules are not providing an answer to that question. So they don't say anything about the price to be paid or the payment terms of what are the consequences of a breach of the contract. They don't deal with intellectual property issues. What happens if I cannot deliver because of export or import prohibitions, there are embargoes? Nothing at all. Or, of course, how do the parties settle any dispute they may have? So let me please put the Incoterms rules in context. And the context of the rules is going to be a contract of sale. And of course, the rules are going to be related to another contract. But remember, the parties are going to agree first, that they want to use the rules to simplify and to help them to facilitate the negotiation of the contract of sale, and second, which rules are they going to use? And that choice is going to have an impact on another country or on other contracts where either the seller or the buyer are not a party. For example, if according to the rule, I am, again, as a Spanish company, I am selling to Panama on a FOB and Spanish port terms, it is the buyer, my client, who is going to contract the ocean cargo. So, okay, we have agreed that under the rules that it is the buyer who is going to contract the ocean cargo, and it is the buyer who is going to enter into this contract with a shipping company, according to our rules that have been agreed with me, but I am not a party of the contract of transport. This is the relationship I am referring to. So we have already said that it is not mandatory to use the rules, but if the parties agree to use the rules, then the content of the rules become mandatory as any other provision under a sales contract. Okay, so how do the parties incorporate the rules to the contract? I am bringing this because this is a summary of a fantastic instrument I, as an international business lawyer, find really useful, which is the SISC, the Convention of the International Sale of Goods, the Vienna Convention 1980, which is the closest we can get in the world to having an international law applicable in 83 countries, which rule in the same way in 83 countries, which are the obligations of a seller and a buyer under an international contract of sale. It is a pity that the parties usually avoid the application of this convention by saying, okay, this agreement is going to be ruled by the laws of, I don't know, of Colombia, expressly waiving application of the SISC. I find that a mistake because if something is sought by companies doing international trade is to have legal certainty. And I think that this convention provides or helps provide legal certainty, because if I am negotiating with a company in China where this convention not only apply, this convention is the law, the Chinese law applicable to international sales contract. And I am selling from Spain, where this convention is also the law, the Spanish law, applicable to international contracts of sale, we don't have to discuss as between a Spanish seller and a Chinese buyer if the laws of China or the laws of Spain apply, because it is the same, it is this convention. And as you can see here, the obligations, there's nothing strange in the obligations of the parties. So why I am bringing this to your attention, because if we see which are the obligations of a seller under the convention, the International Convention for the International Sale of Goods, delivery of the goods, it is understood on time, handing over of any document the buyer may need to do the import clearance or to operate those goods. Transfer ownership, you can see that it is something different from the delivery of the goods. And of course, warranty the conformity of the goods delivered. So where, in which of these obligations can we see that the Incoterms rule play a role? Of course, with delivery of the goods, because Incoterms rules only deal with delivery. When does delivery take place? The moment delivery takes place, the risk of loss of or damage to the goods passes on the buyer, and who pays what? Who takes care of anything needed for delivery to happen, and who pays associated costs to delivery and nothing else. The rest will have to be dealt with under the sales contract. Okay, so once this is clear, let me point out some practical aspects of this delivery of the goods. Okay, if we make a survey, imagine that we are the sellers, and we make a survey. Oh no, I will ask you to be in the shoes of a buyer. I am the seller, I'm your supplier, and we are negotiating. I have offered you a quotation, and of course, in my quotation, I have said, okay, delivery time, which is a crucial point under any negotiation, delivery time will be 5 weeks. I guess, and I bet that 99 of you will understand, okay, in 5 weeks, I have the goods here in my country, in my hands, at my factory, at my facilities. Don't you? But is this what I am meaning? Probably not. Probably not. I will come back to this, but this is to explain that delivery, when we are talking about delivery, when the parties negotiate under a contract of sale, what does delivery mean? They have to address the following points. When is delivery going to happen? That means delivery time. Where? Because the place of delivery is also the place where the risk passes on the buyer. Okay? Who will handle export, import formalities, and who is going to bear the cost of anything associated to delivery? Transportation, shipping insurance, controls or inspections of the goods, security-related costs, taxes, duties, anything needed for delivery. So this is why Incoterms rules were developed by practice, because by using these standards together with a place of delivery or a place of destination, the parties should know how does this happen, who makes what, who pays what, the price I am offering you as a possible supplier, what does that price include and what is excluded, okay? And who does what in terms of costs and in terms of tasks associated to delivery. If we may choose not to use the Incoterms rules, but then under a contract of sale, we have to specifically address all these topics, okay? So common mistakes. many people around the world say, okay, according to the Incoterms rule we have agreed, ownership it passes on the buyer. When? No, the rules don't say a word about ownership. Incoterms rule deal with possession of the goods, not with ownership. Ownership will pass on the buyer according to the law that applies to that contract. And basically, there are like two big systems, two big legal systems in the world. Either ownership passes to the buyer, is transferred to the buyer when payment has been completed, or with delivery of the goods. And basically, all legal systems around the world follow any of these models. This is a reason why Incoterms rules do not deal with ownership, because it is impossible to get a common understanding to opt for one of these two choices, okay? So Incoterms rules do not say a word about transfer of ownership. They only deal with the passing of risk, the risk of loss of or damage to the goods, which will be on the seller until the moment the goods are delivered and will pass on the buyer from the moment the goods are delivered. And I insist, the goods are not necessarily delivered when they reach the final destination. The goods are delivered according to the specific Incoterms rule agreed. Okay? So another typical mistake, I was talking about that a while ago. If I am a supplier, tell you, my possible clients, in my offer, in my quotation, that I am going to deliver in 5 weeks, I guess that 99% of you will understand that in 5 weeks, you will have the goods at your premises. Is that what I have offered? Possibly not, because okay, if delivery time is 5 weeks, FCA sells premises in Bogota, Colombia, where will the goods be after 5 weeks? In seller's premises in Bogota, Colombia, loaded on the truck sent by buyer. If delivery time is CIF, Port of Colón in Panama, where will the goods be after 5 weeks? On board a vessel at the port of departure, not in Colón, Panama, at the port of departure, okay? If delivery time is expressed in terms of 5 weeks, GPU project site in Texas, USA, where will the goods be after 5 weeks? Yeah, in this case, delivery place and the place of destination are coincident, but only when we are using a rule starting with a D, delivery and destination are coincident, okay? So to help you better understanding this, which is the crucial point about Incoterms rules, I think that understanding rules correctly is very simple, and only C rules confuse us. Why? Because look at this. This is what I call Incoterms rules for dummies. And I am not trying to insult you. I use this very simple way of putting it in my daily work, because I understand that there are moments of stress where you say, okay, according where did delivery take place? I have received goods which they have been hit or they have been damaged during transportation. So where did damage happen? So look at this. We have 11 rules in the 2020 version. Okay, think of this. All rules imply delivery at the place of departure before the main transport has started, except for those rules starting with a D. The rule is very simple because D, think of D as destination, okay? So we have 8 rules out of 11 where the place of delivery is at the place of departure. Only, the second rule, only in the 3 rules that start with a D, okay, the place of delivery and the place of destination of the goods are coincident. The second rule, which is important and will help you understand the trouble and the frequent mistakes with C rules. Any named place attached to a rule means the place of delivery. When I say Edwards, my factory in Zaragoza in Spain, that's a place of delivery. When I say FOB Port of Bilbao in Spain, that's a place of the place of delivery. If I say delivery will be made DPU at a buyer's factory in Jamaica, okay, that will be the place of delivery. But what happens when we use C rules? This is an exception. Any named place or port which goes together with a C rule doesn't mean the place of delivery like in the other rules. It means a place of destination to which the seller must contract carriage and eventually also shipping insurance. So let me give you an example. If I am selling again from Spain and I am selling in a CIF Port of Kingston in Jamaica terms, for example, Port of Kingston in Jamaica is not the place of delivery. It is the place up to which I, as a seller, must contract ocean carriage and also a shipping insurance. And that will be reflected in the price I'm offering you as a client. In my quotation, the CIF Port in Jamaica price will cover the carriage to Jamaica and also the shipping insurance. But I, as a seller, I am not taking the risk of anything that may happen to the goods during transportation. Why? Because it is at terms CIF, meaning that I deliver at the country of in the country of departure, meaning that I, as a seller, get rid of the risk when the goods are on board a vessel at the port of departure. So I provide a service to my customer in Jamaica. I provide a service by contracting the transport and taking out a shipping insurance, but I am not warranting that the goods are going to arrive to Jamaica. I'm just providing a service and I am getting the price of that service via the price I am quoting to my client, okay? I know that this may be a little bit tricky, but I hope that these 3 basic rules help you better understanding the Incoterms rules. So, okay. Think of this. The place of delivery, which is also the place where the risk of loss or damage to the goods passes on the buyer, it is defined under the Incoterms rules as the place of or port where the seller performs his main obligation under a contract of sale, which is delivery of the goods. And from the moment delivery happens, not only the risk passes on the buyer, but also any costs related to that delivery will be borne by the buyer. So in terms of costs, all costs are on the seller side until the goods are delivered and will be on the buyer side from the moment of delivery. Okay, these are the basic rules about the Incoterms. So if you want to make sure which is the place of delivery, here you have a summary. Okay, at a seller's premises or factory or warehouse or winery or whatever, before loading, X works. A rule which should be avoided for any kind of international trade. X works is a source of problems for company dealing with international business. It can be used at a domestic level, but shouldn't be used for international transactions. And you may ask, so if it's not suitable for international trade, why is that rule still appearing on the official publication? The answer is very simple, because you are using it. So again, ICC does not invent the rules. ICC only compiles and writes under a publication what is common practice. So our role from ICC is to warn you and to say, okay, you shouldn't use X works as an exporter or as an importer. Why? Because of this. Basically, if you are selling abroad, you don't have anything to prove that you have been actually the shipper, because you don't appear on any document. The seller doesn't even have to deal with export clearance at the country of departure. So it will not appear on any document, and in case you have tax implications coming from VAT or any other sales tax, you may not have any proof, any written evidence why you have invoiced skipping the tax. It is incompatible. It is completely incompatible with the letter of credits, because the seller does not have a single document to prove to the bank that the goods have been actually shipped. So the seller is not going to get the money through the letter of credit. So it is really a problem. If we are buying, we want our supplier to deliver at least when all the export clearance has been made in the country of departure. Because if I am a small importer, I don't want to deal with export formalities in a country where I'm not established and I don't know anything about. So it's not a suitable rule for foreign trade. So if we are used to using X works, let me give you a tip. Instead of using X works, which is a source of conflict in practice, better change to FCA sales premises, which is exactly the same you're doing, but you deliver also at your premises, but once the goods have been loaded on the truck sent by the buyer. In addition to that, you as a seller will have to take care of the export clearance in your country, something you will also typically do under X works, because of course your client is not established in the country. If there's any registration formality, the client needs to do the export clearance, is going to seek your cooperation, and you are going to provide it. So better doing it right. So FCA, you know that it can be used two different ways, like FCA sales premises, meaning X works loaded and export cleared, or FCA any other place. And this is really interesting for sellers. And I will come back to this later, but if you are the seller, you want to get rid of the risk as soon as possible, right? So you can for example, as an alternative to FOB, port of departure, you can agree on FCA port of departure. This is an enormous advantage when you are selling goods in containers, because let me give you this example. If you are selling from your country to a foreign customer, you are selling FOB, port of departure, in your country. Okay. When do you deliver and transfer the risk? When the goods are on board the vessel at the port of departure, right? Okay. And can you control the moment in which the goods are loaded on the vessel? No, you cannot. You cannot, because your truck will arrive to the port authorities will say, okay, go to terminal number X. You will come back to your facilities, and you will not control the precise moment in which the goods will be loaded on the vessel. But during all that period, you cannot control, you are still responsible for any loss or damage to the goods until the moment there's a bill of lading saying that the goods have been actually loaded. So if I were the seller, I wouldn't like to be in this position. Imagine that there's a strike at the port of departure and the goods cannot be loaded. We would be late, incurring late delivery, and probably facing penalties under the contract, damages for late delivery. I wouldn't like to be in that position. What is the alternative? I can agree on FCA port of departure, because in this case, when I arrive with my truck to the port of departure, before unloading the truck, the goods are delivered. And from that moment, the risk is on my buyer. And any delivery time agreed under the contract of sale has been complied by the seller. Okay, so there's a rule which is very seldom used, which is FAS, where the goods are delivered, also at a port, but either on a wharf or on a barge next to the outgoing vessel. It is very seldom used, but it is true that there are certain sectors, and especially commodities and some other goods, where this is actually used. So sometimes people ask, if it is so rarely used, why is it still appearing on the publication? Because maybe it's not very useful in our sector, but there are commercial sectors where this rule is actually useful. So onboard delivery happens on board the vessel at the port of departure. And this happens either FOB, port of departure, or CFR or CIF, port of destination. I mean, the difference between FOB, port of departure, and CIF, port of destination, is basically which costs is the seller including in his quotation. Because the place of delivery, it is exactly the same. Let me give you an example. If I'm a Spanish seller and I am, in my quotation, I am offering a FOB, Port of Bilbao, or I change my quotation to be made on CIF, Port of Veracruz in Mexico, the difference is the price, because the place of delivery, it is exactly the same on board the vessel at the port of departure. Okay, so that also very two interesting rules, very seldom used, but which are very flexible and they give a lot of flexibility to a seller. And I want you to consider them because they offer a seller the possibility of providing a door-to-door service to their customers without incurring the risk of transport. And these rules are CIP or CPT plus named place of destination. Why? Imagine, from Spain, I can offer my clients in the United States, I can say, okay, I can deliver to you these containers, CIP, your factory in Texas, in the United States. And what does it mean? It means that I, as the seller, I am going to arrange for a carriage of those containers until your factory at the destination point. But if nothing to the contrary is agreed, the place of delivery will be my factory or my warehouse when I deliver to the first carrier. So in terms of delivery, place of delivery, and where do I comply with my delivery obligation and any delivery time I have agreed, I will comply with that term, with that time, at my facility, at my premises. ICC is strongly recommending for sellers that if you're selling goods in container, instead of using what is the most used rule, which is either FOB or CIF, port of departure of destination, please switch to CPT CIP, because as a seller, you are going to avoid any problems for late delivery because of strikes at the port of departure, because of situations of blank sailings, for example, of rollover situations with which the carrier company suddenly decides, and which puts the seller in a situation where he's going to incur a late delivery. So there will be a breach of the contract because of late delivery. So a way of avoiding this is to switch in our mind and also in our systems at the company. Instead of using these CIF FOB rules for containers, switch to CPT CIP, because we can make exactly the same contracting the carriage to a port of destination, or these rules give us more flexibility because we can go beyond the port of destination and actually not deliver, but bring the goods to a final destination at our customers' facilities, okay? So please, again, bear in mind, the only rules which imply delivery at destination when the goods find the destination are the rules, okay? DAP, DPU, and GDP. Delivery at the place of destination, okay? So, let me check the time. Okay, so this is just to illustrate. I'm going to pass a little bit quick on this because I have already mentioned, but to give you some examples. FCA can be used in two different ways, as a substitute of Ex Works, which is a rule to avoid. So we can say FCA sells premises, meaning that the seller delivered at his premises once the goods have been cleared for export, unloaded on a truck sent by buyer. But it can also be used in a different way. FCA Port of Kingston's, Jamaica, or FCA Airport of Bogota, or FCA Rail Station X, wherever. So in this case, the delivery place is different because the goods will be delivered when we reach that particular place, either an airport, either a port, a railway station, a logistics platform. But when does the seller deliver? When his truck or train or whatever reaches that particular place without unloading the truck and before loading the goods on the main means of transport, be a vessel, an aircraft, a train, whatever, okay? And CPT, CIP, I know that they are not very well known, but I want you to consider them, especially if you are the seller in an international transaction, to consider these two rules. The only difference is the insurance. CPT, they mean in both cases rules where the seller is responsible for carrying the main transport. They are very flexible because they can be used with any means of transport. CPT, the seller is providing transport to the named place of destination. CIP, the seller is providing transport and also taking out a shipping insurance for the goods. But in both cases, the seller is not taking the risk during transport because the risk passes on the buyer if nothing to the contrary has been agreed. For example, the parties agree that the risk will pass to the buyer at the port or the airport of departure. I know that in practice, nothing is agreed. So for the seller, the enormous advantage of using these rules is that the risk will pass on the buyer at sales premises, exactly the same as if we were using FCA sales premises. So, for example, let's take a situation where I, Spanish company, I am selling to a company in Peru on CIP, Port of Pisco in Peru. So Port of Pisco is the place of destination of the goods to which the seller arranges and pays transport and shipping insurance, but it is not the place of delivery. Okay, the place of delivery will be seller's premises in Spain. Okay. Okay, just a quick note on shipping insurance. There are only two rules where the liability for taking out a shipping insurance is with the seller. And these rules are the two only rules where we have an I for insurance, okay? These are CIF and CIP. This is something that I'm not very happy about because concerning the kind of insurance cover that it is required from the seller, ICC has decided on this 2020 version to follow two different rules for only two rules, which is not something we are not helping. We are not helping practitioners understand the rules by doing this. So the situation is that if we are using a CIF for ocean cargo, the seller complies with his obligation of taking out a shipping insurance by taking out a cargo insurance with the cover provided by Clause C. Clause C means basic cover of the Institute cargo clauses. So it is the Institute of London Underwriters, which is the institution which is like providing standards for international cargo insurance clauses. They have three standards. Clause C means basic cover. Clause B means standard, medium, and Clause A means all risks cover. So for CIF, which according to ICC is it is meant to be for not for goods in container. So CIF is meant to be for those goods which don't have so much added value. The obligation of a seller, if the buyer does not ask for a higher cover, insurance cover, is to take out just the basic cover. I have to say, according to my experience, that this basic cover serves for nothing except for making the insurance company richer. I mean, if something happened during transport, the shipping insurance is going to say, not covered. So my advice, either if you are the buyer and you are instructing your seller to take out the insurance cover, or if you are a seller wanting to provide a good service to your customer, go for the A cover, which is all risks, because not even the all risks standard policy means all risks. Strikes are not covered, war risks are not covered. So it is the only chance that the party, which is assuming the risk, in this case, the buyer, will have an opportunity to claim from the insurance company. Okay, so I'm not very proud of this solution. The working group on Incoterms Rules 2020 came out with, but this is the standard situation. And well, we don't have the time to explain why, but if anyone is interested, I will explain that. So let me, okay, let me give you some examples of how the rules help us or help sellers make a quotation by using the rules. Again, I insist that Incoterms rules do not deal with prices, okay? But of course, they have an impact on the price because you can understand that it is not the same if I offer a quotation of on FCA my premises, what is included in that price? The cost of the goods plus packaging plus if export clearance costs something because I have to pay a fee or something, okay, I will pay for it. Nothing else. It is not the same an FCA seller's premises price that a DDP buyer's premises price, where everything is included in the quotation and the seller will have to pay for everything. But please take this into consideration. Any costs related to delivery is paid by the buyer. Either the buyer arranges for transport, takes out a shipping insurance, pays all related costs, handling, loading, unloading, licenses, verifications, controls, or the buyer says, I'm a small company, I don't have bargaining capacity to get a good price with a shipping company. Please include all these costs in your quotation to me, and I will pay you. So at the end, the buyer is paying everything. So consider that from the point of view of your companies as sellers, going for Incoterms rule, which impose more obligations on you, at the end is just a way for you to provide a better service or a more complete service to your customers, because you are going to recover all these costs you have incurred via the price your customer is paying. Okay, so let me explain you this in detail. I think one of the most interesting changes in the Incoterms 2020 rules is that for the first time we have specific place under each rule which provide, okay, what is the allocation of costs between a seller and a buyer using this particular rule. I don't know if you know that every one of the 11 Incoterms rules are divided in 10 articles. 1, general obligations. 2, delivery. 3, transfer of risk. 4, carriage. 5, insurance. 6 is the delivery document or the transport document. 7, export and import clearance obligations. 8, inspection, packing, marking, everything. 9, for the first time, allocation of costs. Which costs are on the seller side, which costs are on the buyer side. And 10, the notices that the parties have to provide each other, normally concerning, okay, when the vessel arrives to the port of destination, yeah, who's the consignee, to whom do we have to give notice. And these obligations in the publications are like a mirror. A means seller's obligation, B means the mirror obligations of a buyer. For example, A2 will say under each of the rules when and where does delivery take place. So B2 will say, okay, when and where will the buyer take delivery? Okay, so A3 will say, when will the seller pass the risk to the buyer? B3 will say, when does the buyer receive that risk? Okay, and for the first time, and I think this is very practical for you, especially for selling for suppliers, for companies who are the seller. I think it is very practical to have under the rules specific article which says, okay, using these rules, the price offered by the seller has to include this, and these charges. And in the same rule, the costs which the buyer will have to assume as an extra to the price paid to the supplier will be this, and this. So I think it is quite useful. Of course, you have to go to the official publication to be able to use this. And not only this, not only under each of the rules we have this A, B, 9 articles saying which are the costs for the seller and for the buyer. At the end of the publication, for the first time, I think ICC has done something really smart, which is what we call the article by article text of rules, where you have all the Incoterms rules, article by article, explain which are the obligations of the seller and the buyer concerning insurance, concerning transport, concerning costs. So you have there a guide which is going to be really useful to help you, a seller, make and prepare your quotations, and if you are the buyer, to be able to read and to better understand, okay, this quotation that my supplier has given me, what is he including here, and what should I take into consideration because it is not included in my supplier's price. Okay, so let me give you okay, this is, before we go to some examples, let me tell you from experience as a commercial lawyer that, Incoterms rules, this is my experience, are worldwide used every day, and they are most frequently wrongly used because the parties don't really understand how the rules should be used. So at the end, using Incoterms rules incorrectly result in overcharges. So a lot of additional costs in terms of loading and unloading, but I don't know if it is my responsibility to pay unloading charges, or this has already been included in the sales quotation. I must admit that in many occasions, both parties are paying the same charge. So because the company is charging the seller and is also charging the buyer. So I think that it is also a question of responsibility to know how the rules work. So we are not paying overcharges. Let's put it that way. So handling, storage costs at ports, airports, logistic platforms, obtaining a presumed inspection or a certificate of conformity before a delivery, costs concerning inland transportation, domestic taxes or import duties for import clearance, Yeah, I think that most of the problems come from all that kind of overcharges arising at ports because of situations of delays, demurrage, this occupation, overcharges. So the parties, it is not clear to the parties who have to pay for those charges. So we should understand and rely on the rules to know what is included in a quotation and what is not included. So let me give you an example. Here we have, oh, sorry. Let me go back. Okay, this is an example to show you how this A9B9 under FOB, Port of Departure Rules work. If we go to the publication, we go to Article 9, which is allocation of costs as between the parties, and we will have that the seller, in a quotation on FOB, Port of Departure terms, the seller is including in the price offered to the buyer all costs until the goods are delivered on board the vessel at the named port of departure, meaning, for example, any inland transport to the port from the sales factory or premises to the port is included in the price, plus unloading the truck, for example, coming to the port, of course, loading the goods into the vessel, any handling charges in the port, any tax or duty which is paid to the tax authority will be included, because any port charges will be included in the FOB price, and that will be a part of the quotation offered by the seller. Of course, if the seller has to provide a written evidence that delivery has been made on a certain date, except if such a proof, of course, if the transport document, the cost will be on the seller side. I am excluding this case that the proof is for example, the bill of lading, because it will be the buyer, the one contracting with the shipping company. So typically the shipping company will be providing the bill of lading to the buyer. So if there are duties or taxes arising from export clearance, that cost will be on the seller and will be included in the quotation offered. If there are any security requirements or pre-shipping inspections requirements in the country of export, that will be also on the seller side. What must the buyer pay under FOB port of departure? Anything, any costs arising from the moment the goods are on board the vessel at the port of departure, meaning that, of course, the buyer must pay for the ocean cargo. If he wants a shipping insurance, he will pay for that. Any unloading at the port of destination, any duties on taxes needed for import clearance at the place of destination, and of course, costs arising out of a failure to give the notices provided under the rules will also be a cost by the buyer. Those very typical situations where the vessel appointed by the buyer fails to arrive on time or refuse to take the goods or close cargo earlier than the time notified, so that the seller can be with the goods on time at the port of departure, those will be charges for the buyer. Okay. Let me give you another example according to another very much used Incoterms rules, which is CIF, port of destination. In this case, we have already say that either if I am a Spanish company, I am selling a FOB Port of Barcelona, or I am selling CIF Port of Kingston in Jamaica, the place of delivery is the same. On board the vessel at the port of departure. When the goods are placed on board, the risk passes on the buyer, okay? But the main difference between FOB, Port of Barcelona, and CIF, Port of Kingston in Jamaica, is that in the first case, FOB, it is the buyer who has to arrange ocean cargo to Jamaica, and in the second case, it is the seller who has to arrange for ocean freight plus shipping insurance to Jamaica. Of course, those costs will be included in the seller's quotation. So in this case, CIF, the seller must pay all costs until the goods are on board the vessel. Again, any inland transport, port charges or duties or whatever, handling at the port, the freight plus handling costs for loading the goods at the port of departure, any transport security related cost, any transit which is required under the contract of carriage until the vessel calls at the port of destination, the cost of providing the usual proof of delivery to the buyer, cargo insurance. If it is a CIF, remember that the only obligation of the seller is to take out insurance cover with basic risks cover. And as I said before, this is good for nothing. This is good. So if you are the buyer, ask for an all risks insurance cover. And any duties or taxes connected to export clearance. From the moment the goods are on board the vessel at the port of departure, all costs are for the buyer. And of course, unloading the goods at the port of destination will be a cost borne by the buyer. Any duties and taxes related to import clearance at the place of destination will be on the buyer side. And of course, cost arising from any failure to give notices required under the law. So this is just to give you an example about how allocation of costs is explained. I think that the publication is really useful because it's a practical tool to guide you through the process of making a quotation. Typically, a seller is going to have export prices. Okay, these are my prices, meaning this is the price of my goods, including nothing, nothing, only the packaging. Now, you as a customer or potential customer, you want me to provide, what if you take the goods to a port of departure in your country? Okay, I provide a different quotation, FCA, port of departure. So I take the goods to that port. Well, I would like you to deliver the goods on board the vessel I'm going to contract with. Okay, I will also assume all port of departure costs plus loading the goods. Yeah, that's a different price. Okay, I would like you to provide a quotation including transport to a port of destination, so I can compare with the price I get from my freight forward. Okay, yeah, my CIF port of destination or CIP port of destination price will be higher than the FOB port of departure. So the more services a buyer wants, the more expensive the price offered by a supplier will be. We are including services, more services, and more services, and of course, the buyer is going to pay for them via the price it is paid. So before we finish, I want to give you two small pieces of advice, and I want to explain why in your position as sellers, there are two Incoterms rules you should avoid. The first one I have already mentioned. I mean, I don't mind if you're a seller or a buyer. Making in international transactions, please do not use ex-works. I know that this is like I have been in our company, we have been selling on ex-works terms for 40 years, and you are not going to change our mind. Well, let me give you a couple of explanations. I know that it is true. It sounds lovely because if I sell ex-works, I take care of nothing. Everything is on the buyer. The buyer has to arrange transport and insurance and pay all costs and do anything needed to take the goods from one place to another. Yeah, but in terms of reputation, in terms of brand, okay, if I am known in the market as a company that doesn't want to get involved in any kind of service to my client, I think maybe we are investing a lot of money in creating our brand and a good reputation, but we are not doing anything to help our clients. And depending on our country, it can be really difficult for a customer to deal with official registrations or licenses or authorizations needed. And it's difficult for a company who is not established in a country to deal with that. So at the end, we are going to help that company better to take care of those things. I usually tell my clients in Spain that ex-works doesn't exist in Spain. You know why? Because ex-works means that the seller says, okay, the goods are ready. They are packed and ready. Come and pick them up. Collect them. The seller is not obliged to load the goods on the truck sent by the buyer. And in Spain, it is forbidden, according to our security and health at the place of work regulations, it is forbidden. Let's imagine a truck is coming from Poland to collect goods at my warehouses in Barcelona. Okay, so I cannot allow a foreign driver who is not an employee of my company to deal with my handling machines and equipment to load the truck. It is forbidden. So I am going to load the goods on the truck. And this is not ex-works. This is a FCA, sales premises. That's why I say, at least in Spain, ex-works doesn't exist. So please forget about this rule and shift to FCA sales premises. But talking seriously, a seller selling on ex-works terms doesn't have any document to prove that export has actually occurred. And because he's not responsible for export clearance. So at least in Spain, VAT regulations say that there's no VAT on exports. Yeah, but the seller has to be in a position to prove that there has been transport to a third country out of the European Union. How can you prove that there has been a transport if you don't deal with transport, you don't deal with the export clearance, your company is not mentioned on any export document. And of course, if you want to receive payment through a letter of credit, you don't have a single document to present to your bank and to claim money to be paid to you. So it is clear, incompatible ex-works, a letter of credits. Of course, if you as a seller, you are producing or manufacturing tailor-made products and you give credit to your customer, you risk the fact that, you give notice that the goods are ready for collection, no one comes to collect the goods, and the customer cancels the order, and you have incurred in costs to produce goods which are custom made and where you cannot receive payment and you cannot resell them. And as sellers, there's another rule to avoid, which is DDP. Because DDP, delivered duty paid, it is the only Incoterms rule which imposes on a seller an obligation to make import customs clearance at the country of destination. And of course, if you're not established in that country, it is very difficult for you to know what is the practice with that customs. Customs can be very tricky, very difficult. There are some countries more difficult than others. So in general, generally speaking, GDP is a rule to be avoided by exporters. In this case, it is fantastic if you are the buyer and you can agree with your supplier to sell to you, to sell on GDP terms, because you're waiting here, and everything is on the seller side. So I think this is everything I wanted to share with you. And if you have any comments or any question which is not clear, I will be happy to, I don't know if we have the time, but I will be happy to be useful. Thank you very much for your patience and your kindness to be here with us today.
Vashe, thank you so much. No one has the camera on, but I know that everyone right now is like, wow, this was impressive. And I just want to take one of the comments coming from the chat. Actually, it's Sean Rogers. He says, like, I have Incoterms explained before, and this one is the best I have heard today. So I think that's something that a lot of people, now we can see this rain of hearts and claps and everything down there. So I think it's a feeling that we all have right now because it was impressive. We know that the Incoterms, it's very, I don't know if difficult, but it's complex and it requires a lot of time to understand. And you just went through it like smoothly, so easy to understand. So I really want to thank you on behalf of everyone here participating for this clarity and for making it so easy to understand, actually.
Thank you very much.
There's another comment from Fausto that, well, he actually made a question there throughout the session. And then he said, like, you already explained and his doubts. And it's amazing. Thanks for the presentation. Learning about better options for the seller and the buyer has been really worthy. So a lot of comments, all of them are just positive thoughts that everyone has because of this. So I really want to thank you for that presentation.
So my pleasure.
And we have a lot of questions, but I know that we are running out of time. So I will just make one question that was repeated a lot on the chat. And what happens if there is a misunderstanding or a misuse even of any of the Incoterms in both parties? What's the process we need to go through in that case?
Okay, if the parties have agreed on a specific Incoterms rule, let's say that the parties have agreed. I'll take an example, a typical example, which gives rise to a lot of disputes and misunderstandings. Let me put it this way. Again, I'm a Spanish seller, and I'm selling to a company in Mexico, okay? And we have agreed under the contract of sale, we have agreed on, I don't know, CIF Port of Veracruz. I am selling from Spain on CIF Port of Veracruz, okay? 90% of sellers and buyers will understand that delivery occurs when the goods arrived to the Port of Veracruz. And this is not correct, because delivery actually happens when the goods are on board the vessel at the Spanish port of departure, in this case. It means that, let's imagine that, I don't know, one container is lost on the sea. There has been a storm and one of the containers has fallen from the vessel onto the sea. So, yeah, the buyer is not going to be very happy. Who bears the risk of that loss? The buyer. Why? Because all the ocean transportation is made under the risk of the buyer. Why is that so? Because the risk has passed on the buyer at the point of delivery, which was the port of departure in Spain. So here, now, what is the situation here? The parties will discover, because they will not know at that moment when the buyer is making a claim, that, the risk passed on the buyer in Spain. So what are the chances the buyer has? Okay, CIF, we have an insurance. The seller has taken out an insurance whose beneficiary is the buyer. So the buyer can claim from the, or can try to claim from the insurance company. What is going to happen here? Do you think that the insurance company is going to be ready and happy to assist the buyer? Not at all. It will be a Spanish company, typically. So the buyer is going to ask the seller to help him making the claim to the insurer, whose customer, let's remember this, it is a seller. And probably at that moment, the parties will discover in horror that the insurance cover taken out by the seller only covers basic risk. And the insurance company will say, okay, the fact that your container has gone into the ocean, because of course you know that the main liability of the captain of the vessel is not that your goods arrive to the port of destination, but to preserve the vessel. So if the captain decided to get rid of some containers to diminish the weight of the vessel, to sort the storm, that risk is not covered by the basic cover. So of course the buyer here is going to be very, 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 very angry at the seller, and the seller would say, okay, I have complied with my obligation under the rules, which is to take out a basic cover unless you request a higher insurance cover. This is why it is so important for you, participants, to attend this training, because now, as a buyer, you are going to require from your sellers always to provide all risks covered, to be in a position to claim from the insurance company if something happens. Okay?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I hope that makes things a little bit more clear now. So thank you so much, Baje. And I have some, just to wrap up this session, I just have some things to show. I will share briefly my screen, which are related to some of the questions that a lot of you were just raising there on the chat. So first, for those who arrive late or who needs to leave early, as I was explaining and writing there on the chat, all the sessions are being recorded. So in case you wanna rewatch this session or one of the ones that happened during the previous days, you can do it there on connectamericas.com SMExport week sessions, or you can scan the QR code that you see there on the screen. So we will put all the recordings there. So again, in case you miss a specific part or you miss a whole session, you can watch all the recordings there. Also, a lot of people were trying to connect between each other on the chat, and some of the questions were missing afterwards. So I just highly recommend that you join this community. This is a community in Connect Americas where you will be able to post your products, your services, to look for partners, to look for clients or suppliers. So if you want to connect, do networking with other fellow business people, my advice is just for you to join this free community. You don't have to pay anything. It's just go there and start doing networking. You have there the address. It's connectamericas.com/US-LAC, or you can also scan the QR code there. Then we were thinking about this tool at the very beginning of this session today, which is a tool that was developed all together by Connect Americas, the IDB, and the ICC. So the aim of this tool is to help you have this structure that Basha was explaining today, what concepts are integrated or included in each of the Incoterms. So I really encourage you to go here. This resource, as I said, developed all together with the ICC. It's for free, open to everyone and for free. So you can scan the QR code there and access and navigate this platform, or go to incoterms.connectamericas.com. And the very last thing, if you don't want to miss anything that is happening this week with the SMExport Week, or in Connect Americas, or with the new resources that we have from the ICC once they posted new resources, I also encourage you to join the WhatsApp channel in case you want to have all the news apart from the newsletters that we send and so on. If you want to have everything or you on your phone, you can also join our WhatsApp channel so as to have everything there on your mobile phone. So my advice is also to scan the QR code here and join the chat. This will be it for today. Tomorrow we will have a new session that will be led by Export TT, the export agency of Trinidad and Tobago, and it will be about market analysis. And then we will finish on Friday talking about trade fairs. So I think that you don't want to miss any of the upcoming sessions. Thank you so much for staying here with us. Thank you so much also, Vache, for your great class. We do really appreciate all your knowledge, the knowledge that you share with all of us. And thank you to all the participants as well that stay up to the very end. Thank you so much, and see you tomorrow.
My pleasure. Bye. Thank you.
Bye.